What's up, everyone? I would say sports fans usually, and if you're a sports fan and you're watching this, that's cool because not everybody necessarily is going to be an American who watches this, but everyone everywhere is going to be subject to the politics that goes on where you stay. I just wanted to watch this because it's of interest to me. I wanted to just share my thoughts. I don't usually share my opinions in terms of my everyday life, usually because I have such strong opinions. It can turn into a debate that goes on for a while. I've learned a while ago to not let the emotions get the better of me. I transfer that over to my sports takes and opinions that I share. I feel, for the most part, whenever you do, when I say you, I mean anyone, whenever one does have a discussion where there is a hot debate on one or more different views that are usually opposing each other, for all that each individual believes in what they say, I can truly say that I have never, ever, ever seen anyone say, you know what, at the beginning of this conversation, I thought this, now I think that. I've never seen it happen. I'm not saying it hasn't, I just never seen it. About the only time you ever come close to that is if you're arguing over past history in terms of what happened. Did this team win? Did that team win? Did this issue get voted? Was it about this? Was this issue about that? Something that can be concretely decided by checking history to see what was recorded. And that's the only time I've ever seen anybody change their position. But in terms of a philosophy of this is how I think this should be done, this is how I think this team should go about, this is the player I think is better than that player, things like that, I've never seen anyone change their mind. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I going to be bothered to get worked up full of emotion when I can just state my case, try to be intellectual about it as possible. You want to at least I do. I want to speak from more than just I want this because I want this. This guy's better because I say this guy's better because it's I mean, if it has value to yourself, that's pretty much all it ever really needs to have. But if all it really never needs to have is just value to yourself, why do you even bother to share it with somebody else in the first place? I mean, are you trying to change that person's mind, or are you just trying to say what you think and you don't care if you change that person's mind? That's going to be probably different for each individual. But not getting off the track too far. Just this is the first of a series of clips. I decided instead of just recording the entire lengthy hearing without knowing how long it's really going to carry on, I just wanted to break it down into smaller segments so it makes it, I guess, easier to digest, for lack of a better way of putting it. And just wanted you to have an opportunity to watch it, share your thoughts, opinions down below. Again, I'll be repeating this desire to try to have it be a civil exchange of philosophies, different, same, totally unique perspectives. I welcome them all, and I'll be commenting back and forth. At the end, I'll most likely share my final thoughts without trying to lean one way or the other. Just my general overall impression of the. Like I said, maybe my thoughts and perspective might be unique, but I won't talk too much further. I'll just go ahead and share this, and I'll try to introduce each segment the same way. And also, I wanted to have a very special thank you to MSNBC. I tried to find as neutral of a channel as possible to record without having too many comments that I feel would be biased one way or the other. It's difficult, definitely, these days, but I want to try to at least come as close as possible. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and appreciate you watching this. And again, thank you for taking the time to.
The amount of debt he was carrying and omitted information from his personal financial statements to induce a bank to lend based on incomplete information, end quote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You lied on financial documents. So you lied to financial institutions in order to secure loans, So we've established that you lie on your taxes, you lie to banks, and you have been convicted of lying to Congress. It seems to me that there's not much that you won't lie about when you stand to gain from it. In fact, the prosecutors for the Southern District of New York noted that each of your crimes, quote, bear a common sense of characteristics which each involving deception and being motivated by your personal greed and ambition. Is your appearance here today motivated by your desire to remain in the spotlight for your personal benefit?
No, ma'am.
You have sought out ways to rehabilitate your image, from tax evader, bank swindler, and all-around liar to an honorable, truthful man by appearing before cable news. I'm concerned you could be using your story and this congressional platform for your personal benefit, such as a desire to make money from book deals. So can you commit under oath that you have not and will not pursue a book or movie deal based on your experiences working for the president?
No.
You cannot commit to making money off of a book or movie deal based on your work?
No. There's two parts to your question. The first part of your question, you asked me whether or not I had spoken to people regarding a possible book deal. And I have. And I've spoken to people who have sought me out regarding a movie deal.
No, I didn't ask you if you'd
That was
spoken
the
to
first part of the
anybody. I
question.
said, can you commit under oath that you will not, that you have not and will not pursue a book deal?
And I would not do that, no.
Okay. Can you commit under oath that you will not pursue opportunities to provide commentary for a major news network based on your experiences working for the president?
No.
Can you commit under oath that you will not pursue political office in the state of New York?
No.
So you don't commit to changing your ways, basically, because you want to continue to use your background as a liar, a cheater, a convicted liar to make money. That's what you want to do.
And that's going to get me a book deal and a movie deal and television and a spot on television? I don't think so.
Well, it appears that it will. I yield my time, remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman, to Mr.
I
Dillon.
thank the gentlelady for yielding. Mr. Cohen, in your sentencing statement to the court in December of last year, you said, "I want to apologize to the people of the United States. You deserve to know the truth." Approximately a month later, BuzzFeed News ran a story that was the story in the country for a couple days. BuzzFeed's story ran January 17th, 2019. On January 18th, your counsel went on TV and wouldn't confirm or deny the story. The next day, the special counsel's office did something that's never happened. Never happened. They said the description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and the characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. Why didn't your lawyer, the day that he's on TV, when this story is the biggest thing in the news in the country, why didn't he deny the BuzzFeed story?
Because I didn't think it was his responsibility to do that. We are not the fact checkers for BuzzFeed.
He's on TV to talk about the very story you committed to the court when you were trying to get your sentence reduced, that the American people deserve to know the truth. You had the golden opportunity to give them the truth on a false story, the BuzzFeed story, and your lawyer didn't say a thing. He said this: "I can't confirm, I can't deny." You had an opportunity to do exactly what you told the judge you were going to do 1 month after you said it, and you didn't do it. Why not?
Again, it wasn't our responsibility to be the fact checker for the news agencies.
This is the biggest story in the country.
Please let me finish. The president says so far approximately 9,000.
I got 8 seconds. I got 8 seconds. I'll let you finish.
Chairman, may I
The
please
special counsel
Chairman, can I
said
please finish?
something they've never done. They said that
Sure.
story was false. Now you can respond.
Okay. My response. The president has told something over 9,000 lies to date. Do I ask Mr. Davis or Mr. Monaco, or do I go on television in order to correct his mistakes?
When Mr.
The
Davis
answer-
goes on
sir,
to talk
the answer
about
is
that
no.
specific subject,
The
you
answer is
should.
no. And I would like to.
Gentleman's time is listen up. The gentleman's time has expired. You may finish answering the question, and then we're going to go to Mr. Conway.
All I wanted to say is I just find it interesting, sir, that between yourself and your colleagues, that not one question so far since I'm here has been asked about President Trump. That's actually why I thought I was coming today. Not to confess the mistakes that I've made. I've already done that. And I'll do it again every time you ask me about taxes or mistakes. Yes, I made my mistakes. I'll say it now again. And I'm going to pay the ultimate price. But I'm not here today. The American people don't care about my taxes. They want to know what it is that I know about Mr. Trump. And not one question so far has been asked about Mr. Trump.
Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Cohen, based on your testimony and your 10-year experience, I think you can recognize the behavior you're being subjected to on the other side of the aisle. Discredit, slander, use any trick in the book to prevent your testimony from sticking. The idea that a witness would come to us who's flawed, and you certainly are flawed, means they can never tell the truth, and there is no validity whatsoever to a single word they say, would discredit every single criminal trial of organized crime in the history of the United States, because all of them depend on someone who's turned. It would make RICO null and void. We couldn't use it anymore. This Congress historically has relied on all kinds of shady figures who turned. One of the most famous who led to the decapitation of organized crime families in America, Joe Valachi, congressional hearing. He was a witness, and he committed a lot worse crimes than you're convicted of Mr. Cohen. So don't be fooled by what my friends on the other side of the aisle are trying to do today. It is do everything but focus on the principle, known as individual number one in the Southern District of New York, as I recall. Is that correct, Mr. Cohen?
That is correct.
Now, Mr. Cohen, I want to ask you about something that's not in your testimony and that so far has not been made public. In our committee staff search of documents provided by the White House that were otherwise redacted or already in the public, and I guess the White House thought that was funny, they made one mistake, the White House. There was an email from a special assistant to the president to a deputy White House counsel, and the email is dated May 16th, 2017, and it says, and I quote, POTUS, meaning the president, requested a meeting on Thursday with Michael Cohen and Jay Sekulow. Any idea what this might be about? End quote. Do you recall being asked to come to the White House on or around that time? With Mr. Sekulow? May of 2017.
Off the top of my head, sir, I don't. I recall being in the White House with Jay Sekulow. It was in regard to the documents, the document production, as well as my appearance before the House Select Intel. But I'm not sure if that's specifically different. But what I will do is I will check all my records, and I'm more than happy to provide you with any documentation or a response to this question.
Well, that's you sort of touch on presumably the purpose of the discussion, at least among others. This meeting occurred just before your testimony before the Select Committee on Intelligence here in the House. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Was that a topic of conversation with the president himself?
If this is the specific instance that I was there with Mr. Sekulow, yes.
So you had a conversation with the President of the United States about your impending testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What was the nature of that conversation?
He wanted me to cooperate. He also wanted just to ensure, by making the statement, and I said it in my testimony, there is no Russia, there is no collusion, there is no deal. He goes, it's all a witch hunt, and he goes, this stuff has to end.
Did you take those comments to be suggestive of what might flavor your testimony?
Sir, he's been saying that to me for many, many months. And at the end of the day, I knew exactly what he wanted me to say.
And why was Mr. Sekulow in the meeting?
Because he was going to be representing Mr. Trump going forward as one of his personal attorneys in this matter.
So it was sort of a handoff meeting.
Correct.
In any way, final question, did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message that he wanted to reinforce.
Gentleman's time has expired,
Thank
Mr. Massey.
Mr. Cohen, can you just clarify, did you say that at times you would do what you thought Mr. Trump wanted you to do, not specifically what he told you to do?
At times, yes.
So you just went on your intuition?
I don't know if I would call it intuition as much as I would just say my knowledge of what he wanted because it happened before and I knew what he had wanted.
Does a lawyer have a duty to provide his client with good legal advice?
Yes,
Were you a good lawyer to Mr. Trump?
I believe so.
When you arranged a payment to Ms. Clifford, you say in your testimony, I'm going to quote from your testimony, that you did so, quote, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do. You said that, unquote. That's your testimony today. You said you didn't even consider whether it was legal. How could you give your client legal advice when you're not even considering whether it's legal?
I did what I knew Mr. Trump wanted. This conversation with Mr. Trump started.
I didn't ask whether you were a good fixer. I asked whether you were a good lawyer.
Sometimes you have to meld both together. I needed to, at that time, ensure and protect Mr. Trump. And if I put which I'm clearly suffering the penalty of, I clearly erred on the side of wrong.
So you feel like without bothering to consider whether it was proper, much less whether it was the right thing to do, by ignoring any conscience, if you have one, that you were protecting Mr. Trump.
I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand.
You feel that was how to protect, as his lawyer, you feel that you did a good job. You said you were a good lawyer, right? Is that being a good lawyer? To not even consider whether it's legal or not?
I didn't work for the campaign. I was working and I was trying to protect Mr. Trump. I sat with Mr. Trump, and this goes back all the way to 2011. This wasn't the first scenario with Ms. Daniels.
Let's go back then.
So, my point is, this was an ongoing situation. It didn't just start in October. Please, you have to let me finish.
Well,
it started in October. It didn't start in October.
Let me ask you.
It started many years earlier.
When were you disbarred?
Yesterday, from what I read in the paper.
Yesterday. When should you have been disbarred, based on the legal counsel you were giving your client?
I don't have an answer for your question.
How long were you counsel for Mr. Trump?
Since 2007.
When is the first time you gave him bad legal advice or failed to inform him of his legal obligations? As you testified today, you did in the case of the payment to Ms. Clifford. When was the first time you did that? Would that qualify for disbarment?
I don't know, sir. I'm not the Bar Association.
I think you should consult with them maybe occasionally on some of these things.
There's no point now. I lost my law license.
Has anybody else promised to pay Mr. Davis for representing you?
No.
Nobody has.
No. Are you offering?
Question, quickly. July, you said, and this is also in your testimony, the days before the Democratic Convention, you became privy to a conversation that some of Hillary Clinton's emails would be leaked. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was that you said late July? Do you know the exact day?
I believe it was either the 18th or the 19th, and I would guess that it would be on the 19th.
But it was definitely July.
I believe so, yes.
Do you know that was public knowledge in June? This was Mr. Assange, and I'd like to submit this, unanimous consent to submit this for the record.
Without objection, so.
Mr. Assange reported to the media on June 12th that those emails would be leaked. So I'm not saying you have fake news, I'm saying you have old news, and there's really not much to that. I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cohen, you know, I'm quoting you close I can earlier, said, I spent last week looking through boxes to find documents that would support your accusations. Where are those boxes, good sir? Where are those boxes? Are they in your garage? Or?
They're in the storage.
And are these not boxes that should have been turned over to investigative authorities during the many criminal investigations you've been subject to?
Sir, these are the boxes that were returned to me
If
post the raid.
they include data pertinent to crimes that you've committed, should they not have been turned over and remanded to investigative authority? Did Mr. Lanny Davis know of these boxes?
The gentleman's time has expired. You may answer the question.
I don't understand his question, sir.
Very well. Christian Morley.
Mr. Cohen. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Cummings, for convening this hearing, and thank you, Mr. Cohen, for voluntarily testifying this morning. Mr. Cohen, you were the Executive Vice President and Special Counsel for the Trump Organization, correct?
I was the Executive Vice President, Special Counsel to Donald J. Trump.
And Special Counsel means you were the attorney for him, is that right?
Just means I was there in order to handle matters that he felt were significant and important to him individually.
And those included legal matters?
Yes, sir.
Sir, as a former attorney, you're familiar with legal documents known as non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, is that right?
Yes.
Sir, I'm sure you know that NDAs, properly written in scope, can be reasonable in certain business contexts, but they can also be abused to create a chilling effect to silence people, as we've seen in the Me Too movement and other places. Isn't that right, Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen, the Trump Organization used NDAs extensively, isn't that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Cohen, I'm reading from a recent Washington Post article regarding the language in one of these types of NDAs where the terms were described as very broad. For instance, the terms confidential information was defined to be anything that, quote, Mr. Trump insists remain private or confidential, including but not limited to any information with respect to the personal life, political affairs, and or business affairs of Mr. Trump or any family member, close quote. Do those terms sound familiar to you?
I've seen that document.
In fact, there's a class action lawsuit filed this month by former Trump campaign worker Jessica Denson that this NDA language is illegal because it is too broad, too vague, and would be used to retaliate against employees who complain of illegality or wrongdoing. Would you agree that in the use of these types of NDAs with this type of language, and later when Donald Trump sought to enforce them, that he intended to prevent people from coming forward with claims of wrongdoing?
Yes.
Would you agree that the effect of the use of these NDAs and their enforcement was to have a chilling effect on people or silence them from coming forward?
I apologize. If you want to define chilling, I'm not sure.
Oh, just that he would, in using these NDAs or trying to enforce them, would basically try to keep people silent.
That was the goal.
And nothing at the Trump Organization was ever done unless it was run through President Donald Trump, correct?
That's 100% certain.
Okay. Mr. Cohen, do you believe that there are people out there today, either from the president's business or personal life, who are not coming forward to tell their stories of wrongdoing because of the president's use of NDAs against them?
I'm sorry, sir. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Sir, I have a couple other questions for you. When was the last communication with President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
I don't have the specific date, but it was a while ago.
Okay. Do you have a general time frame?
I would suspect it was within 2 months post the raid of my my home
Okay, so
hotel.
early fall of last year, generally.
Generally,
And what did he or his agent communicate to you?
unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
Fair enough. Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Sir, Congressman Cooper asked you about whether you were aware of any physical violence committed by President Trump. I just have a couple quick questions. Do you have any knowledge of President Trump abusing any controlled substances?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Do you have any knowledge of President Trump being delinquent on any alimony or child care payments?
I'm not aware of any of that.
Do you have any knowledge of President Trump arranging any health care procedures for any women not in his family?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Mr. Cloud.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Cohen, can you tell me the significance of May 6th?
After May 5th.
In terms of, sir,
A couple months from now.
that's the day that I need to surrender
Yes,
to
sir.
federal prison.
Could you, for the record, state what you've been convicted of?
I've been convicted on 5 counts of tax evasion. There's 1 count of misrepresentation of documents to a bank. There's 2 counts, one dealing with campaign finance for Karen McDougal, 1 count of campaign finance violation for Stormy Daniels, as well as lying to Congress.
Thank you. Can you state what your official title with the campaign was?
I did not have a campaign title.
And your position in the Trump administration?
I did not have one.
Okay, in today's testimony, you said that you were not looking to work in the White House. The Southern District of New York, in their statement, their sentencing memo, says this: Cohen's criminal violations in the federal election laws were also stirred, like others' crimes, by his own ambition and greed. Cohen privately told friends, colleagues, and including seized text messages, that he expected to be given a prominent role in the new administration. When that did not materialize, Cohen found a way to monetize his relationship in excess with the president. So, were they lying, or were you lying today?
I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm just saying it's not accurate. I did not want to go to the White House. I retained, and I brought an attorney in, and I sat with Mr. Trump, with him, for well over an hour, explaining the importance of having a personal attorney, that every president has had one, in order to handle matters like the matters I was dealing with, which included, say, like some reserves, Stormy Daniels, dealing with Stephanie Clifford, and other personal matters that needed.
Memo. Excuse me, this is my time. Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to submit the sentencing memo from the Southern District of New York for the record.
Without objection, to ordered.
It's fine. All right, I'll get that to you in a second. Okay, this memo states that you committed 4 distinct federal crimes over a period of several years. You were motivated to do so by personal greed and repeatedly used your power to influence for deceptive ends. It goes on to say that they each they were distinct in their harms, but bear a common set of characteristics, that they involved deception and were each motivated by personal greed and ambition. There's a lot we don't know in regards to this investigation, but here's what we do know. We know that you were expecting a job at the White House and didn't get it. You made millions lying about your close access to the president. You have a history of lying for personal gain, including that's banks, about your accountant, to law enforcement, your family, the Congress, the American people. The Southern District of New York, you said that you did all this out of blind loyalty to Mr. Trump, but your sentencing memo states this: this was not an act out of blind loyalty, as Cohen suggests. Cohen was driven by a desire to further ingratiate himself with a potential future president for whose political success Cohen himself claimed credit for. Now, we're in a search for truth, and I don't know, Chairman, how we're supposed to ascertain the truth in this quagmire of a hearing when the best witness we can bring before this has already been convicted of lying before us. And what's sad is the American people have seen this play out before. We have people in prominent positions fail, and then a couple years later they get a book deal. Now you're set to go to jail for a couple years. You come out with a multi-million book deal. That's not bad living. And so my question is will you today to commit to donate any further proceeds to book deals, to film reviews, to charity?
No.
Thank you. I yield my
Will the gentleman yield?
Now,
The gentleman yield.
now, may I finish?
With the gentleman yield.
yield to Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish
Mr. Cohen.
No sense of
May I finish my?
Mr. Cohen, he's yielded me, and so
I didn't finish my response.
listen.
I'm
Everything's
asking
been made.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish my response, please?
I'll let you respond, but let him answer his question, please.
Mr. Cohen, everything's been made of your lies in the past. I'm concerned about your lies today. Under your testimony just a few minutes ago to me, you indicated that you had contracts with foreign entities, and yet we have a truth and testimony disclosure form which requires you to list those foreign contracts for the last 2 years, and you put NA on there. And it's a criminal offense to not have that accurately. So when were you lying? Either in the testimony to me earlier today or when you filled out the form?
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Cohen, you may answer his question and then whatever you wanted to say on it.
His questions, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for his question. But as
No, Mr. Chairman.
as it relates,
The gentleman is out of order. He said he does not have an answer.
Mr. Chairman, when we were in the majority, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, hold on.
Very well ordered. The gentleman has just said he doesn't have an answer. And you're garbage on over your time.
He's under oath to tell the truth. One of them is not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
You'll have time to answer the question.
Chairman, just a question, Mr. Chairman, just a question.
Mr. Raskin.
Yes,
Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for your composure today. Our colleagues are not upset because you lied to Congress for the president. They're upset because you stopped lying to Congress for the president. Now, you've described the Trump campaign as a once-in-a-lifetime money-making opportunity, the greatest infomercial of all time, I think you said. And this may be the most trenchant observation of your whole testimony. Do you think the Trump campaign or presidency ever stopped being about making money for the president, his family, and his organization?
yes,
When did it stop being that?
when he won the election.
And what did it become about at that point?
Then it had to be about figuring out what to do here in Washington.
Can you carefully explain to America how the hush money payments to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels worked? Can you carefully explain what catch and kill is?
Sure. I received a phone call regarding both Karen McDougal as well as Stormy Daniels, obviously at different times, stating that there were issues that were going to be damaging to Mr. Trump. With the Stormy Daniels, it started in 2011 when she wanted to have something removed from a website. And that was the first time I met Keith David. I spoke with Keith Davidson, her then acting attorney, and we were successful in having it taken down from the website. It wasn't until years later, by around the time of the campaign, did they come back and they ask, what are you going to do now, because she's back on the trail trying to sell the story. At which point in time, David Pecker, on behalf of the National Enquirer, reached out to her and her attorney in order to go take a look at lie detector test that would prove that she was telling the truth. They then contacted me and told me that she was telling the truth, at which point, again, all the time,
She took a lie detector
she
test.
allegedly took a lie detector test and was seen by an employee of the National Enquirer. At which point in time, I went straight into Mr. Trump's office and I explained why this time it's different than another time.
Okay, now, when you say different than other time, were there other women paid sexual hush money by Donald Trump or his organization? Was this a standard operating practice?
No.
So you're not aware of any other cases where it had taken place?
I'm not aware of any other case that Mr. Trump paid. So which brings us to the Karen McDougal. He was supposed to pay. He was supposed to pay $125,000 for the life story of Karen McDougal. For whatever the reason may be, he elected not to pay it. David Pecker was very angry because there was also other monies that David had expended on his behalf. Unfortunately, David never got paid back for that either.
So David Pecker had done this in other cases of other mistresses or women?
Other circumstances, yes.
Okay.
Not all of them had to do with women.
Are you aware of anything that the president has done at home or abroad that may have subjected him to or may subject him to extortion or blackmail?
I am not, no.
Okay. Are you aware of any videotapes that may be the subject of extortion or blackmail?
I've heard about these tapes for a long time. I've had many people contact me over the years. I have no reason to believe that that tape exists.
In December 2015, Donald Trump was asked about his relationship with Felix Sater, a convicted felon and real estate developer, and he replied, "Felix Sater, boy, have to even think about it. I'm not that familiar with him." Why did Trump endeavor to hide his relationship with Felix Sater, and what was his relationship?
Well, he certainly had a relationship. Felix was a partner in a company called Bayrock that was involved in the deal of the Trump Soho Hotel, as well as, I believe, the Trump Fort Lauderdale project. Why did he want to distance himself? That's what Mr. Trump does. He distances himself when things go bad for someone. And at that point in time, it was going bad for Mr. Sater.
You said you lied to Congress about Trump's negotiations to build his Moscow tower because he made it clear to you that he wanted you to lie. One of the reasons you knew this is because, quote, Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow tower negotiations before I gave it. So this is a pretty breathtaking claim, and I just want to get to the facts here. Which specific lawyers reviewed and edited your statement to Congress on the Moscow tower negotiations, and did they make any changes to your statement?
There were changes made, additions. Jay Sekulow, for one.
Were there changes about the timing? The question of...
Gentleman's time has expired. You may answer that question.
There were several changes that were made, including how we were going to handle that message.
Mr.
Which
Crow,
was...
were you finished?
Yes, so the message, of course, being the length of time that the Trump Tower Moscow project stayed and remained alive.
That was one of the changes.
Yes.
Mr. Groveman,